Yahweh Yahweh Bahashem Mashiach Yahweh Shai. That's all praises to the Heavenly Father through His Son Yahweh Shai, which the world ignorantly calls Jesus the Christ. Welcome Israel. All blessings to Israel who is watching today. Welcome to my series, When I Was a Slave. This the biblical proof for Israelites breakdowns. This breakdown will provide the biblical proof of the slaves that served in America's Slavery Captivity are Israelites. The Holy Bible will be used to demonstrate the correlation between the Ancient Israelites and the so-called Black, Indigenous people of color, also known as BIPOC, who are the lost chosen people that are covenanted to serve the Most High God of Israel. A little background behind the authorship of When I Was a Slave. Salaki. During the 1930s, the U.S. economy was in the Great Depression, and they considered it the most devastating economic crisis experienced in the United States. So the federal government, under the administration of Franklin D. Roosevelt, created a wide range of programs for economic recovery. One of the groups created was called the Works Progress Administration. The WPA for short, the WPA for short was the Slave Narrative Collection, a group of autobiographical accounts of former slaves, compiled in 17 states during the years of 1936 through 1938. The collection consists of more than 2,000 interviews with former slaves. The interviews, most of them first-person accounts of slaves, of the slave life, and the respondents' personal reactions to bondage, afforded aged ex-slaves an unparalleled opportunity to have recorded for posterity their personal accounts of slave life, to describe in their own words what it felt like to have been a slave in the United States. All right. So with that being said, we're going to go into our first interview of this book of memoirs to correlate how we are the ancient All right, this is When I Was a Slave. This is a memoir of the Slave Narrative collection by the Dover Thrift Edition. So this is what was stated to have been collected over 2,000 interviews of actual first-hand accounts of slaves that lived within the Americas. And this is a common understanding that happened through the Americas with the so-called Hispanic, the so-called Black man, and the so-called Indigenous Native Americans. So these are very similar understandings and accounts that we're going to review that could be applied to each one of these different demographics. The first interview is of a former slave named Mary Anderson. She was interviewed near Raleigh, North Carolina, by Pat Matthews when she was at the age of interviewed at 86. So we're going to just go through the account and then biblically break down how it correlates with what would happen to the Israelites. So let's go to our first understanding here. Let's go to the chapter of Deuteronomy 1 and verse 1, so you can understand how and who the Bible is describing that it pertains to. These be the words which Moses spake unto all Israel on the side of Jordan in the wilderness. He's not speaking to all nations. He's just speaking to specified Israel on this side of Jordan in the wilderness, in the plain over against the Red Sea, between Paran and Tophel and Laban and Hazeroth and Disabab. So the context of the books of Deuteronomy, the chapters in Deuteronomy, are all titled to the Israelites and being spoken by the Most High through Moses. So let's go into understanding why that our people were experiencing what they were experiencing. So we're going to go ahead and jump into Deuteronomy, the 28th and the 15th chapter. 15th verse. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So there's a couple sections in the Bible which list out the curses that would befall the Israelites if they went against the commandments. And also there's the same sections of Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28. They list the curses and the blessings that will befall if we would keep the covenant of the Most High God that we made with our forefathers. So let's continue to read this. Let's go back to the narrative. So she said, "My name is Mary Anderson. I was born on a plantation near Franklinton, Wake County, North Carolina, May 10th, 1851. I was a slave belonging to Sam Brody, who owned the plantation at this place. My missus was Evelyn. My father was Alfred Brody, and my mother was Bertha Brody." So as you can see from the very beginning, once we became slaves, it shows that once you have a slave, you have to purchase a slave. So let's go to the book of Deuteronomy 28 and see where within these curses, there's the listed curses that we would show that we are the ancient Israelites. So if we go to 28 and 46, you'll see that, well, actually, let's go to 28 and 45 because it kind of quotes 28 and 15 again. "Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and a wonder, and upon thy seed forever." So this book was written thousands of years ago, but the Lord said, regardless of how long after we had made that covenant with him, that these curses, this covenant that we agreed to with our forefathers, it will be upon the children of Israel and their seed forever. So when you look at this, this is where you start to understand all these curses that you read amongst this book in this chapter is going to be only pertaining to one nation of people who agreed to have a covenant with the Most High God. So this doesn't apply to the Edomites. This doesn't apply to the Moabites. This doesn't apply to the Ishmaelites, Elamites, the Assyrians, only to the Israelites. So these are the blessings and the curses applying to our people. And so as you can see, and inside of this, I was slave belonging to Sam Brody, who owned the plantation at this place. So if you have slaves, that means you own slaves. And in order to own slaves, you have to buy them. They have to be passed down. But generically, they were bought in auctions, as majority of us know. So let's read a curse where it would show that the children of Israel would be subject to being purchased as slaves. "And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships." And everybody knows, well, and if you don't know, the indigenous, so-called Native Americans, the so-called Hispanics, and the so-called blacks. I say so-called because we're not any of these bywords that, again, the Lord said that he would place upon us if we did break the covenant. But more or less, this is the form of transportation. And it said that we'll be brought into Egypt. This is important. So when you look at Egypt, we literally are not physically in the landmass of Egypt inside of the Americas. But so the Bible speaks in parables and similitudes. So you have to understand, what does this mean when they say to be brought into Egypt? So if we go into, let's see, Exodus 20 and 2. There we go. Slacking. Exodus 20 and 2. "I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage." So the Lord defines Egypt in scripture as the house of bondage. And that is very important to know, because when you start reading certain words in the Bible, you would get very confused if you don't understand the context. And the Bible in all reality is contextual. It is not a universal band-aid to apply to all situations. You have to keep it in context from Genesis all the way into Revelation. You can't start in halfway and only enjoy half the role in like the New Testament doctrine, because it still specifies in the New Testament specifically only to Israel gets salvation. Israel. but it uses more of an inferent language at certain points, but without leaving and understanding the entire book in context, you could get very swayed to be misguided and misled in certain contexts of certain words. So to get back to the point, Egypt itself in Deuteronomy 28 means slavery. So our people, which were a part of the slave trade, these individuals right here all came over here on slave ships and were sold on slave ships and shipped across in the transatlantic slave trade from the South Americas over to Europe, over to the Indo-Pacific. We've been sold to every nation under the sea. And so, again, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And we've never been back to our homeland. And honestly, we won't even know where our homeland is because we are so lost for an understanding of what and who we are that the Lord said that we would be considered a byword, and we would lose our identity and not know who we truly are. So give me 1 second, Salaki. And let's see, where is this at? 28 and where's that? Let me just show you, Salaki. Okay, there we go. And thou, Salaki. And thou shalt. Oh, Salaki, the screen wants to be, the devil wants to get in the middle of it. And it said, and thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. A byword is what you would call yourself. I'm a Negro, I'm black, I'm Mexican, I'm Dominican, I'm from the Philippines. Like we're in all nations. At one time we were calling ourselves Greeks. Paul called himself a Roman, but he was a Benjamite. And so when you start saying, okay, I'm American, African American, that means you're from 2 different continents, which are named after 2 different so-called white men, which I don't descend from that, and it's impossible to descend from 2 men, just in general. So we have these bywords placed upon us, and we were so destroyed of understanding our heritage that we live and adopt these bywords and become these products of our captivity. Okay, so nobody is black, but that's what we like to associate with. So the Lord said we would be without our identity, and we would be broken and subjugated to our oppressors, and we would not have a land to go to. So just being, my point is that we're so destroyed for a people that if you ask them, even if you put the Bible to the side, which I would never recommend, where would you go if you call yourself a black man? We're one of the biggest burdens of proof that we are the ancient Jews that were lost, and we lost our complete heritage. There's been movies. What was it? Roots, when it was Kunta Kinte, and literally they had a scene where you seen the young man, the Israelite, getting himself beat so bad that and forcibly shown that my name is Kunta, but the enemy, the so-called white man, the slave owner, the Edomite, had told him and commanded him that his new name was going to be Toby, until they beat the heritage out of him. That's what our people have endured throughout the time in this country. This memoir that I'm reading are just interviews of actual slaves that survived in the 1900s, 1930, 1936. I have family that was born. My grandfather was born in 1906. My grandmother was born in 1912. So I have met my grandparents, and they're true descendants from slavery. You understand what I'm saying? So their fathers and mothers witnessed these atrocious acts from these people. But let's understand who these people are. Thou shalt see it no more again, and shall be sold unto your enemies. And when you look at these people who were sold, they were not sold to people who look like them in this country. They were sold to the Eastern Europeans who came from England and colonized this area and called it in America, so they can have a new beginning and separate from their monarchy of England. So our enemies, the Lord said, are the ones who sold and bought you and sold your enemies for bondmen, which are slave men, bondwomen, which are slave women, and no man shall buy you. And when you go into this, no man shall buy you, there's no contradictions in the Bible. So you got to understand the context of what it means when it says no man shall buy you. When you read, it says you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. And then after that, it says, and no man shall buy you. You'd be confused if you don't understand. So when you go into the etymology of these words, you'll see that when it says that you shall be bought and no man shall buy you for bondmen and no man shall buy, right? We'll go into Strong 7069, and it says the word is kana, the root word, and it means to get, acquire, create, buy, or possess. And when you look at the different meanings, it says a God originating, creating, redeeming his people. So that means that once you are sold amongst your enemies and you are getting the curses befalling you, that no matter what you do, Million Man March, you got Martin Luther King, you got Malcolm X, you got Nat Turner, you have Black Lives Matter to bring it to more relevant times. Nothing is going to be able to redeem you until the Messiah comes back, the Mashiach Yahweh comes back to save us from our conditions and we repent from our sins. So right now you see people getting shot in the back 60, 90 times, and now how many people in this last month, how many Israelites were murdered this last month with their hands up? There was an incident just in Denver, Colorado, that a man surrendered, put his hands up, and the cops shot at him into a crowd and hit an additional 6 people in the radius as the man's hands is up just because he was an Israelite. And at the very end of the video, you see a sister that's like, why do they keep killing us? Because this is a part of the curses, that we would not be able to be redeemed no matter what. You see wars across the world. Somebody is, let's say Putin is invading into Ukraine right now. You have countries all over the world sending billions of dollars to help a nation fight against a nation. But these people that are fighting against each other are all the same nation of people. As you can see in this is the next point. Her father's name was Alfred Brody and the mother was Bertha Brody. And I'm positive that these two were not white men or white women. They did not descend from Sam Brody, but while every one of us now have our last names, you can see where those last names came from, which were, we were purchased and then they became our last name like cattle. And if you look at the scriptures, you'll see this is where and who would do this to us, and they do this to us. They've done this to us throughout history, because this is the way that these people work, and that they have no mercy against you. Psalms 49:11, and their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever. So no matter what land that these Edomites, these so-called white people, the Europeans go, their thought is that their names are going to continue forever, and their dwelling places to all their generations, and they call their lands after their own names. So they have a tendency to take over some land, just like the British came to the new country, the discovery, that's what they called it, the new discovery, where they came and discovered America while it was inhabited with our ancestors. They said that this was for the form of new conquering and discovery. So we're going to claim this land regardless if there's people that are living there or not. We're going to take this in the name of us and change it into what we want it to be called, which is after Amerigo Vespucci, the map maker. And then they came from England, and then they colonized in the Americas and took our ancestors into slavery. But the same people who came from England now call themselves American. And now an American, if you look at them, they will tell you, I know where my roots go to. I'm Dutch, I'm German, I'm English, I'm French, I'm Portuguese. But they'll say that ultimately they're an American. So now they've learned how to separate themselves from their original descendancies, and subsequently that separates them from the crimes and atrocities that befell their ancestors, because now they can say that they are no longer those people. I'm American, but the only reason you're American is because your forefathers that were British came to take over this land that was inhabited by my ancestors. Okay, let's continue. She continues and says, we had good food, plenty of warm homemade clothes, and comfortable houses. So with that being said, we're going to go into, let's just read that again. We had good food, plenty of warm homemade clothes, and comfortable houses. So when we go back into the book of Deuteronomy 28 and 48, it says, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies. And again, we discovered the Lord said it, that our enemies who were those who sold and bought us as bondmen. So, you know, some Israelites are too thin-skinned, and they love oppression and they love subjugation. I am not one of those Israelites. I love my people, and I want y'all to wake up, and I want you to be righteous and repent and understand who you are as a person and truthfully your identity. And you are an Israelite. You are not an American. Nobody is an American. That's a lie. So it said, therefore thou shalt serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, and in hunger. And she said, what did they say? We had good food, right? Plenty of homemade clothes, and in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness. Right? So for they clothes and in nakedness, and in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. And that's exactly what they did. They put yokes of iron on us until we were completely destroyed. It said the slave house were called the quarters, and the house where master lived was called the great house. Our houses had 2 rooms each, and master's house had 12 rooms. So it seems as if you're doing a lot of labor and you're not getting any recompense for any of this work. Both the slave and white folk building were located in a large grove, 1 mile square, covered with oak and hickory nut trees. Master's house was exactly 1 mile from the main Lewisburg Road, and there was a wide avenue leading through the plantation and grove to Master's house. The house fronted the avenue east, and in going down the avenue from the main road, you traveled directly west. So just looking at that for a second, you see the slaves, they had 2-bedroom houses, shack quarters, and they master probably had a wife. Led me to believe they got a wife and some kids, because they're comfortable in their superiority and own the slaves. And us as slaves, the Israelites, we had 2 rooms. And I grew up knowing that, you know, my how many of our families you can see have large families. So when we get together, we multiply. You know what I'm saying? So it says, thou shalt betroth a wife, on Deuteronomy 28 and 30. Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. So when you're looking at, they had a big house, and they call it the great house. Slaves were not allowed to live in the great house unless you were a house slave. But the majority of the slaves were not living inside the great house with the master. They were living near pigsties. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shall not gather grapes thereof. And you're gonna do all kind of labors, plantation work, and you're not gonna be able to enjoy none of the fruits of your labor. Continue on. The plantation was very large, and there were about 200 acres of cleared land that was farmed each year. A pond was located on the place, and in the winter ice was gathered there for summer use and stored in an ice house which was built in the grove where the other buildings were. A large hole about 10 feet deep was dug in the ground. Then ice was put in the hole and covered. A large frame building was built over it, and at the top of the earth there was an entrance door and steps leading down to the bottom of the hole. Other things beside ice were stored there. There was a still on the plantation, and barrels of brandy were stored in the ice house, also pickles, preserves, and ciders. Many of the things we use were made on this place, and that's a curse itself. When you running around and you having to go and buy things from the store, that is a curse. You should not be doing that. Listen what it says. So if you grow everything that you have at your house, you don't need to shop in the store. So you see, curse shall that basket be in the store. So they don't even have to go shop, because all the stuff that they make, they have textile mills, all the stuff they have slaves to create this. So they're just profiting off of nothing but pure slavery. There was a great mill, tannery, shoe shop, blacksmith shop, and looms for weaving clothes. So they never had to spend and give another nation a dime for them to have clothes, to have food. Everything that was there was given off of the backs and slavery of the work that was built up by the Israelites, the former slaves of the American transatlantic slave trade, and the ones that came before that. So I say the slavery of the Americas, all inclusive, from the beginning, from exploration to the transatlantic. And so Deuteronomy 28 and 39. These are just curses we're going over here. It's a very simple understanding, because once you start realizing who did these things happen to, there's not one time you can look back and see the so-called Chinese man has been taken from the land of China in an entirety, all of their citizens, and brought over to serve as bondage and chattel slavery, as animals, where you're literally branded with the last name of your owner. So where we had Hebrew names, now you got names as Johnson and Anderson and Stevens, all English names. If you were captured by the conquistadors, Perez, Ruiz, Gomez, Gonzalez, all these conquistador Spaniard names. But it says, thou shalt plant vineyards and dress them, but shalt neither drink of the wine. So they had different wineries. What did they say right there? They had a great mill, so they could make brandies. They had a steel mill over there, so they had everything. They had preserves. And it says, but thou shalt neither drink of the wine nor gather the grapes, for the worm shall eat them. So, and they weren't allowed to eat anything that they provide and produce from their hard labor and bondage. There were about 162 slaves on the plantation. Every Sunday, every Sunday morning, all the children had to be bathed, dressed, and their hair combed and carried down to master's for breakfast. It was a great rule that all the little colored children eat at the great house every Sunday morning, in order for master and missus could watch them eat, so that they could know which ones were sickly and have them doctored. So when you start looking at this, it's to the point where we're going to go into the book of Genesis 40. Genesis 40 and 15. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. So we didn't do nothing to deserve to be put into slavery against them, but our forefathers were breaking the commandments. So ultimately, the Lord came and cast judgment, but we were not offending or against any other nation during the land where they came and stole us. They just literally came and stole us off the west coast of Africa, and we were sold by the Africans. We're not African. That's one thing that we need to understand from the top, is that we are not African. Not one bit. And for that to be showed, just to understand, you're not African. If these curses are hitting a bell with you, and they coordinate with your history, you're not African. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast. So nobody should be saying anything talking down to you, or about your animals, your pets, your dogs, that ye may know how the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians, which are the Hamites, Hamitic people, Africans, and Israel, which are Shemites, Shemitic people. We're not the same. Just all skin folk ain't kinfolk. So just because we share complexions, that doesn't mean we descend from the same people group. That's what our people, since we are so destroyed, we don't really have a sense of understanding of like how that could even apply to us. But if you look at through the Spirit, let's look and go into understanding that just for a split second, just so we can make a little bit of understanding. Jeremiah 17 and I believe, let's say 4. I want to say 4. Yes. And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thy heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. Doesn't that sound pretty familiar to what happened to us when we got put into slave ships and brought over here to a land that nobody even knew? They call this a new world, right? That's what they like to say. But we had our family before that sailed over here. That's where the Native Americans, the Gadites, the Issacharites, some Judah, so we've been together for a long time, but we sailed over here in the times before during the Assyrian captivity. So we were to lose our understanding and our heritage, our name, our nation. And just to add a little bit on that, look what it says right here on let's see, I like this Bible. Let me just duplicate that real quick. Here we go. We'll go into Psalms. Psalms 83. Psalms 83. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. Anybody who would put you in chattel slavery, who would beat you, rape you, murder you, they hate you. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation. So when you ask yourself, where do I come from? And you like, it don't matter. This is the curse right here. This is one of the things that let you know you would discontinue from your heritage. So automatically you should be saying, this is making sense. The only reason I say that is because I'm embarrassed, because I don't know who I am. And I don't want to look weak in front of others, because if we can't afford to look weak in front of others, look how they kill us and we think we somebody. Imagine that, what they'll do to you if you feel like you didn't know who you were. That's the curses we are under. And it says, let them cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. And the America has something called the South, which was known for slavery, which was the what? Confederacy. So these words are very familiar to describe exactly those who were the enemies of the children of Israel, that intentionally beat your nation, beat your native tongue out of you, beat your customs. You celebrate, if you are Israelite, if you are so-called Hispanic, a black man, Native American, and you find yourselves with a 4th of July shirt on, you're a fool. Goddamn you. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're celebrating while your family and ancestors in 1776 were on the cotton fields, getting hung, being pulled apart, tarred and feathered, raped, murdered, oppressed. You celebrating the so-called white man, which is Edom, the Edomites, their victory and freedom to continuously beat you until you lost your heritage, completely murder you until you have so much fear that you have lost sense of being a man. Our men walk around without their beards. They like to be smooth shaven like a little boy. They follow with their head down behind their wives. They don't lead their homes no more. They don't raise their children no more. They're quick to turn their back. And these are all curses. Literally curses. That it said there would be confederate against thee, the tabernacles of Edom, the so-called white man, the Ishmaelites, the so-called Arabs of Moab, the so-called Chinese, the Hagarenes, Gabal, which are all these are right here, so-called African tribes, Ammon, which is the Japanese, Amalek, which is the so-called Jewish man, the so-called Jewish man, the Philistines, another African tribe of Tyre. So you see, look into the neighborhoods where we live. Who has gas stations up in your neighborhood? Ishmael, the Arab. Who redlines your houses? Who put Section 8 and government assistance into the so-called black neighborhoods? Edom, because now you can't have a husband in your house or you don't give help. So the woman naturally pushes out the man just to provide for the children. And now you have broken homes because they didn't want us to be an organized unit or we're strong. Who sells all the weave? You got your woman running around talking about she got real Brazilian hair, real doggy hair because she ashamed of her hair. Or she used so many damn perms to try to look like the so-called white man woman that she bald-headed now. She ashamed of her afro, her kinky hair, because she and herself believes that she should be I don't understand that the mirror image, the standard of a so-called white woman. But you got the white women trying to act like your personality, trying to get the curves like you are, spending the arm and a leg to get the Brazilian BBLs. We ain't got to go into it. The lip injections. They over here curling. They getting cornrows. Walking around like they sassy, like they have the flavor, the salt that you guys, but y'all taught them, y'all showed them the recipe. Now they cook it, and the whole time you discount yourself as nothing, and you strive to see and be what they are, and they don't even like who they are. That's why they had you to set you up to do it, so they can come in behind you and take it over, like they say. They like to name things after themselves. So you do. How many inventions were created by Israelites, so-called Black, Native American, Hispanics, that were patented by so-called white man? Let's talk about Jack Daniels. Wasn't that a slave formula? And then that was not given the rights because he was in captivity, but the family, they was it Uncle Nearest? Now they have their own formula, the true. So this is something that is pretty undeniable, our way of life in this country, but because we're so oppressed, and Israel always needs attention. Israel's ashamed. Israel wants to be the oppressor, but the Lord said in Proverbs 3 and 5. No, that's not 3 and 5. Let's see what he says, because the Lord's speaking through the Spirit. Let's just go there real quick. The Lord said right here, 21. Let's see, where is it? Is it by his knowledge, Salaki. Yeah, there we go. 3 and 31. Envy thou not, thou oppressor, and choose none of his ways. So if you looking at the woman or the man, I want what the white man got. I want to live like him. So all our women want straight permed hair. They wearing wigs, and they think in their head they looking good. That's what they thinking. But any man with sense is looking at somebody that don't. That's not what they look like. They know they don't look like that. But it's to the point now that people don't remember what they look like. because they're used to using filters that when they see themselves for real, they don't believe that's what they look like. And that's sad. And that's how bad our people envy the oppressors. That they're not happy with the way that God made them. They need to be the way that the enemy wants to portray them, the oppressor. And we are a nation of sick people, and we need to be healed. And that's what the scriptures do, man. Know the truth, and it shall set you free. So we'll continue on. Sundays was great on the plantation. Everybody got biscuits Sunday. The slave woman went down to masters, because in that time the women was the Willie Lynch letter was their plan was to separate and break down. So they would want to put the man against the woman. They want the light skin against the dark skin. They want, everything to be broken so we don't have a structure. So now you see the way it goes, that the woman has been so exalted by Esau, which is Edom, which is the so-called white man, that they are big-minded, haughty. They're proudful, and they say they don't need a man. They run the man because they were brought into slavery to do such. Because the white man's best guard dog is the so-called black woman, because she will be the first to tear down the black man. She'll be the first to protect her slave master that gives her flour and an allowance, and tear down her own husband and the men of her people, that because she doesn't see them as protectors, because Esau in slavery destroyed the image of a strong male presence as a head in front of the woman, and that's been generationally passed down as a way of thought to view the men of their own people. That's why you'll see them running into the arms of the so-called white man so quick. Look at TV. Any movie shows that the young black woman, or a young black woman, or an old black woman, they seek to be comforted and protected and provided to by a so-called white man. A man's daughter, a so-called black man's daughter in a movie will be disrespectful, be hateful, be condescending, but go out and find a white boyfriend in the movie, or to look to her friends' fathers as their fatherly role, to say you're okay, but this other white man is greater. Okay, and Sunday is a great day on the plantation. Everybody got biscuits Sunday. The slave woman went down to master's for their Sunday allowance, and all the children ate breakfast at the great house, and master and missus gave out fruit to all. The slaves looked forward to Sunday as they labored through the week. So it was a great day. Slaves received good treatment from master and all his family. So this is Sunday. What day do so-called blacks and Hispanics and natives like to go to church? They love to go to see pastor on Sunday. They turn on their TV to watch the TD Snakes, the Creflo, Steal Your Dollars, the Joel, I'm the Devil Osteens, hiding $600,000 in this church, stealing from the people, because he is the same people that stole you and your family off the coast of the west coast of Africa. But who turned and changed the times and made the word of God a lie? Let's see what it says here. Who? Romans. And we like to Romans 1. Let's say, who changed the truth of God into a lie and worshipped and served the creature more than the creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. Who said that the day of rest that we're supposed to honor is Sunday? Let's just go back to the basics, because that's when he decided to change times and events on us to keep us in sin. Because one of the first things that we were supposed to do as an agreement to the Most High God was to what? Let's see, Exodus 20:8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt do no work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within the gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So he said, and rested the seventh day. Let's look. What is the first day of the week? Sunday. Okay, so let's count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Saturday is the seventh day. So why is it that your rest day, the good day on the plantation is Sunday? Who gave you the religion Baptist? Let's see what the Lord. Let's see who is Baptist in the Bible. How can we put this, y'all? Israel, how can we put this? Dates of created date, religion, dates, religions were created, dates, religions founded. Yeah, let's go there. Let's just go Judaism, Christian. Let's say the timeline of religion. Let's go Christianity. There we go. Let's go. Now we care about everybody else's. Simple English. Origins of Khan Academy, Christian, Tanaka, religion, timeline. Let's see. No, this isn't a good one. Who founded founders of Christianity? Nah, listen. Modern Christianity. Modern religions. Modern day religions. Let's see. List of spiritual religions. Modern day dates of religions founded. Let's say. Okay, oldest cult. All right, through the spirit, I can't find it right now. But let's say, when was Baptist found? When was Baptist founded? Yeah, let's look at this. See, these religions were created by this dude right here, Roger Williams. Actually, William. He had the first Providence Day, Rhode Island, by Roger Williams. Shortly after this, Martin Luther. The Protestant Church, which was made by a so-called white man. These are all religious. I have a good list. I gotta find that. I can find a Baptist. When was Baptist? Protestants. Baptist religion was made in 1638. Our forefathers were not Baptists, and a white man founded this. Who founded Jehovah's Witness? Let's say Jehovah's. Let's see. Let's say Jehovah's white man was another white man. Was founded in 1872 by Charles Russell. So all these religions that we follow are all white-based religions, white Christianity. When were Christian religions dates, religion dates, religions dates, date, origin. Let's see, maybe we can find something different here. Okay, yeah, let's go into the. So yeah, see, let's go. Martin Luther created the Protestant Church, Christian churches, Christian. See, these are just generic. But you get the point. So like through the Spirit, you get the point that Baptists, all of these things were created during slavery so we can be obedient. Because they use certain aspects of the Bible to make us feel less guilty for being, for serving them as virtue. Okay, so we're supposed to keep the Sabbath day holy, not Sunday, but they taught us that, and that's why to this day people worship, they'll buy and sell on the Sabbath, but the Lord said in Nehemiah not to do so. He said, keep the Sabbath day holy, do no work, do none of the such. But we still want to do that. So it says, Nehemiah 8, and he said, let's see, which one is that? Nehemiah. I always get this one confused. Yeah, it's Nehemiah 10. That's what it is. Nehemiah 10. And it says, and if the people of the land bring ware or any victuals of the Sabbath day to sell, that we would not buy it of them on the Sabbath or on the holy day, and that we will leave the 7th year and the exaction of every debt. So you're not even supposed to buy or sell on the Sabbath day. You don't do no work, That's how you keep it holy. You're supposed to congregate with your people. You're supposed to, read the scriptures. Have a day for the Lord that you Sabbath. You're holy, so that means you separated yourself, right? So it says on the Sabbath that basically that he turned, and so if you don't keep the Sabbath like you're supposed to, that means that you're in sin. And when we're in sin, the Lord doesn't fight for us. And this has to be described and defined so there is no misunderstanding of what sin is. 1 John 3 and 4. Whosoever committed sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. So if in Exodus 2, he said, Exodus 20, he tells us to keep the Sabbath day holy. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And we are doing this on Sunday. That means we're in sin and in oppression. So right there, that's letting you know the curses are going to be upon us because we're not keeping the word of the Most High. Even though we're in bondage, we're not. Okay. Let's continue. The slave children all carried a mussel shell in their hands to eat with up to the great house. The food was put on large trays, and children all gathered around and ate, dipping up their food with the mussel shells, which they used for spoons. So they were there with mussel shells, just slurping food up, eating slop. You understand? They're not eating big old T-bone steaks and sitting up there with master just cutting back and being like, today's a great day to rest. No, they're over there. They got little dirty seashells, things we're not even supposed to be touching because they're unclean to us. Leviticus 11:9 said we don't even supposed to eat off of those types of things or touch their carcasses because they're filthy. We're using those as spoons. Those who refused to eat or who were ailing in any way had to come back to the great house for their meals and medicine until they were well. Okay? So Ezekiel 16 and 27. Let's go. So Ezekiel 16 and 27. Behold, therefore I have stretched out my hand over thee, and have diminished thine ordinary food, and delivered thee unto the will of them that hate thee, the daughters of the Philistines, which are ashamed of thee, of thy lewd way. So you're not even eating regular food. You're eating slop, diminished slop, and you're getting fed by those that hate you. That's playing upon tables. Like, this is only happening to our people. The so-called white man's the one eating the finest of things. He has all the stills. He has the meals. He has you picking the cotton. You out there slaughtering the chickens, frying the chicken, cooking the dumplings. And you over here with a mussel shell. You know what a mussel shell is? Disgusting. Mussel shells. Yeah, there we go. Look at this. This is what the little poor children was eating with. Our ancestors eating with these right here, spoons, like because they not. That's what they would give them. That's what you got, little babies eating. Let's see. So you can see what these, because it's easy to talk about it, but let's look what these little kids look like. You know what I'm saying? This could be our ancestors right here. Little kids picking cotton, getting beat to death. Doesn't matter. You out here, little baby. Let's look. Look at this. Out here in the cotton fields, all of us. That's like the same type of work when Pharaoh was making us work real hard out there, huh? Like in Exodus. Therefore, out in the cotton fields, right? So, therefore, this is Exodus 1:11. They did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built Pharaoh treasure cities at Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. So when you're looking at the pictures right here, you got a brother and his wife, but look how many children out there. We multiplying and growing, but they got a taskmaster sitting right there on that horse, beating the children of Israel, just like they did in ancient Egypt. They did it in America too. Look at the back of a dollar bill. Let's look at what it says on it. What is this for? Why is this pyramid, this ancient Egyptian pyramid that Pharaoh was using, representing the treasure cities of the bondage, like Exodus 20:2 said, the house of bondage? Why is this on the back of this dollar bill that they use as currency, and they have taskmasters over us in the fields like Pharaoh, like they were afflicting us with rigorous work? Okay. Master had a large apple orchard in the Tar River low grounds, and up on the higher ground and nearer the plantation's house, there was on one side of the road a large plum orchard, and on the other side was an orchard of peaches, cherries, quinces, and grapes. We picked the quinces in August and used them for preserving. Master and Mrs. believed in giving the slaves plenty of fruit, especially the children. So it just makes me lead that they knew that back then there was a lot more herbal. So if you feed them with the fruits, you're going to keep them without ailing, because they're going to get some nutrition, because you can't have dead slaves. You got to give them something to get their energy and to grow a little bit strong. But they feed them slop and let them eat a few of the plums. In Leviticus 26:26. Let's get that up. Let's get that real quick. Leviticus 26. That's luck. And when I have broken the staff of your bread, 10 women shall bake your bread in one oven. And they shall deliver you your bread again by weight, and ye shall eat and not be satisfied. So we always were given, we would do the work, and we wouldn't be able to eat enough. We'd always be given scraps. And if you will not for all this hearken unto me, but walk contrary unto me, then I will walk contrary unto you also in fury, and I, even I, will chastise you 7 times for your sins. So you got slaves being beat to death for stealing cornbread, for trying to eat some peaches outside of being given approval to do so. And this account that we're reading on this first account, this isn't your average slave. This is a, as you can hear, it seems like a use of a better word, a less treacherous slave owner than majority of them. But you're a tyrant by having slaves, and you raising them intentionally to be chattel. To know that the best way to have slaves is to remove their origin, just so you can grow you some oranges. That's some real sinister stuff. Master had 3 children, 1 boy named Dallas, and 2 girls, Betty and Carrie. He would not allow slave children to call his children master and missus unless the slave said little master or little missus. He had 4 white overseers, but they were not allowed to whip a slave. If there was any whipping to be done, he was always said he would do it. He didn't believe in whipping, so when a slave got so bad he could not manage him, he sold him. All right, let's talk about that real quick. So we're going to go to the book of Matthew 23 and 10. Matthew 23 and 10. Let's see what the Lord says about calling little people masters and not. Let's see what he says. Neither be ye called masters, for one is your master, even Christ. So it tells you here in red letter, Yahushua says, don't call no man no master. For one is your master, which is the Most High. Even Christ, that's even Christ's master. That's who he looks up to. So who is the dirty old white man to make you, after beating you and raising your kids and your wife being beat, no clothes, sleeping outside next to the pigs, getting diseased? Who are you to call them master? And then if you looked and said anything other than that, they'll throw you on the tree and hang you by your neck. And these are the same people that you're trying to save. Talking about if you hearing this message saying that this ain't for sort of so-called white men. This is only for you, Israel. This is for us to get salvation and retribution and save from our enemies. But you mad because you can't bring the people that continues to kill your people every day? Then the Lord said 2/3 of you ain't gonna make it from the first place. This isn't for you. So we're gonna go to the book of Exodus 5 and 13. And the taskmasters hasted them, saying, fulfill your work, your daily task, as when there was straw. So you got the taskmasters sitting over the back of him. You know, they saying they're not going to whip him, but he ain't going to let them just be sitting in the field. So you got taskmasters that are going to be set up, making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You see what I'm saying? So you got these white overseers, same thing as the taskmaster. In Deuteronomy 4:27, and the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, where the Lord shall lead you. And so when you out on these plantations, all you got are the people, the slaves that are with you. You can't meet up, hang out. This ain't no party. So you and your family are gonna be separated and scattered among every nation, all the people selling you left and right. You got, even on the plantation, you separated out. You can't really congregate, or you're gonna get beat to death. So you scattered all over the place. So master didn't quarrel with anybody. Mrs. would not speak short to slaves, so she wouldn't say. She's saying that she's speaking highly of these devils. But both master and Mrs. taught slaves to be obedient in a nice, quiet way, so they can keep their peace at their plantation. The slaves were taught to take their hats and bonnets off before going into the house, and bow to say, "Good morning, Master Sam and Mrs. Evelyn." So they act like they had to teach us how to be civilized when they were the ones coming out of the Caucasus Mountains, all nettled together, laying around like wild beasts, grunting and eating juniper roots. But they broke us and destroyed us with that yoke of iron, until the point we didn't realize we were civilized. But once we were under their oppression, that they completely destroyed the structure of understanding, our foundation of a society. We were a high functioning society. We didn't have disease as they had. They brought the disease with their filth, because they didn't know how to wash their ass. They didn't know how to separate from the pigs. They eat filthy animals, pigs, lobsters and shrimp, and they eat bottom feeders. And then they taught you to eat bottom feeders and tell you it's a delicacy. So now you look to them as if eating a snail is high dining. I'd rather eat a lamb, a nice rack of lamb, you know what I'm saying, cooked just right, or a nice like big steak, or some chicken and dumplings. I don't want to eat no roaches. I don't want a shrimp is a water roach. Google it. I'm led to believe if you get a roach and you boil it and you crack it open, it'll look just like a crawfish or something. Try it. If you live nasty, if you like pigs and stuff, you probably nasty, so you probably like that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, but anyways, moving on. Some of the little Negroes would go down to the great house and ask them when it was going to rain. And when Master and Mrs. walked in the grove, the little Negroes would follow along after them like a gang of kiddies. So that, and that's similar to what we do to this day. You see the white man and you just running behind him like he's just so great, while he got you and your children out here being abominable, running behind doing horrible things, believing in smoking weed. Everybody want to smoke weed, everybody want to get lit, all the women want to shake their ass because that's what they were taught. Who taught you how to be a whore? Who was responsible? Whose thumb were you under when you learned to rob and steal and kill from your brother? Who taught you these behaviors? Because we naturally weren't doing that to each other. We had sentiment towards each other. Who taught us to hate each other like they hate each other, like they hate us? We learned that. That wasn't something we were doing when they got us off the west coast of Africa, or out of the Americas. They knew no better. Some of the slave children wanted to stay with them at the great house all the time. They envied that they wanted to live good. They saw that what they was living in, pigsties, and that big house that their daddy and their uncles built, that looked a lot better because they had all the food. They had the warm blankets. They had the clean drinking water. They knew no better, of course, and seemed to love Master and Mrs. as much as they did their own mother and father. How disgusting is that? As a parent, you got your children that are beating and hanging. You old enough and wise enough to know the condition and state you in. But you telling your children to love the master, just like you love us. And that's the same thing that you teaching these kids to this day. Love your white oppressor. Forget about the past. But the Lord said, bethink it. Let's get that real quick. 1 Kings 8. The Lord said, remember. Let's see what he said. Yeah, 8 and that's right. I was getting close. 8 and 47. And he says, yet if they shall bethink themselves in the land whither they were carried captives, So you can't be like, oh, you know what? I don't like talking about slavery because it didn't happen to me. It happened to you, brother. It happened to you, sister. It happened to your grandparents. It happened to your ancestors. And if you a uppity Negro, I'm gonna just say, if you was an uppity nigga thinking that you are exempt from slavery, like, oh, that didn't happen to my family, but every other nigga in America, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should re-examine yourself, because you should see how hurt and destroyed as a person you are if you are ashamed that you come from slaves. Because the Lord said the greatest, let's go right here, Deuteronomy 7:6 real quick. Just so, this is why you should be ashamed. Because these are curses that only befall the Israelites. But that's a special thing. For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God had chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are on the face of the earth. So if you ashamed to be the slaves, the ancient Jews, the ancient Israelites, then you ashamed to be the Most High's holy seed. And you want to be favored amongst your oppressors. Like you believe that they, as being so-called white people, don't realize that they know they had your ancestors in slavery, but you want to play uptown nigga. Like I'm too good. Like, not me. Nah, I'm just like you. Shit, my family wasn't no slaves. Like every nigga that y'all know mixed with everything. I'm 3/4 Japanese. I'm Italian. I'm French. Like, you everything, but you don't know what you is. But at the end you say I'm black. You that curse, that byword. And it just baffles me, man. It's like it's completely crazy. We're gonna go to the book of 1 Peter. That's 1 Peter 5, man. 5 and 5. Going to the New Testament for some of these people that, for some reason, they just don't understand that the Bible is an entire book, not just a part of it. You see? So likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves unto the elder. Yea, all ye subject one to another, and be clothed with humility, for God resisteth the proud, and give grace to the humble. And so, just like it said right here, you know, that they over here being obedient, trying to act like they humble. So I'm led to believe that this might be one of the scriptures that they would teach these so-called Negroes. You know, be under subjection unto me, because, you know, for God, you know, if you're too proud to be, you're a slave and you're too proud to be a slave, you know, then you need to humble down, because God gives grace to the humble. So teach your kids to be humble and to love the master, just like, you know, the Lord said. And the Lord never said to love the master. He said to hate thine enemy. Never trust thine enemy. So like, the Lord said that. Let's get that real quick. Let's get that real quick. Ecclesiasticus 12 and 10. Let's get that. Ecclesiasticus 10. So if they were keeping the Lord's word, they should have did this. The Lord said, there we go. Oh, Lord, Salak, it's 11. Ecclesiasticus 11. 11 and 10. Did I lose my mom? I am. Salaki. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Never trust thine enemies, for like as iron rusted, so is his wickedness. Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust hath not been altogether wiped away. So it's just saying, don't be trusting these enemies. Don't trust the white man talking about that's your family. Oh, I love them. They so good to us. They give us apples. but you owned land before they came and stole you. You know that right next to you they hung little JoJo yesterday. You know, they beat your kid, your sister to death. But you supposed to love master, because the Lord, they them good, they good. Some coons, man. That's straight coonery. And and what's disgusting, it says that it's a love the master and always used to look. It said they knew no better, of course, and seemed to love master and missus as much as they did their own mother and father. Master and missus always used gentle means to get the children out of their way when they bothered them, and the way the children loved and trusted them was a beautiful sight to see. And what did the Lord literally just say? Never trust thine enemy. Because just because he humbled himself and seemed like he's real gentle moving out of their way, he's evil. But our people don't get it. Even then, now there's nothing new under the sun. Patrollers were not allowed on the place unless they came peacefully. And I never knew of them whipping any slaves on master's place. Slaves were carried off on 2 horse wagons to be sold. I have seen several loads leave. They were the unruly ones. So you got a slave talking about the other slaves that unruly, meaning that they weren't happy. They were highly upset. Unruly. Let's look what that means. Unruly, disorderly, and disruptive, and not amendable to discipline or control. So no matter how much you beat them, they were trying to leave. How much you beat them, they would not bend, and it was not okay that they were slaves. But you got this confession, this interview coming from a broken woman. She knew her place as a slave. She stayed there and looked at her brother that was getting beat and was trying to rebel against the so-called white man that had her and him and all their family, all his nation of people. They were not to be trained. They were not to be domesticated. They were not to be controlled. They'd rather be sold or killed than to settle. But it can't say that about a lot of you Israelites now. You guys are comfortable in your sin, comfortable in this oppression. You like to you look at the so-called white man in your neighbor and you love him. And the Lord said that in Deuteronomy 28:68, that's your enemy. Thine enemies sold you and bought you. And they're the same blood that runs in them people running around right now, the same blood that ran into the slave owners that bought your ass and your family back then. No difference. No difference, We're going to go to Micah 7:2. There it is. The good man is perished out of the earth, and there is none upright among men. They all lie in wait for blood. They hunt every man and his brother with a net. So when you saying that the patrollers were not allowed on the place, these are the men that are hunting the steps of your brothers that were trying to be unruly and run away and try to get away. But they're saying right here that these slave owners wouldn't let these men on here just to beat on them. But if they stepped off, then it was fair game. Exodus 21:16. And he that stealeth the man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he should surely be put to death. All praises. So who stole us? Who stole us and sold us? And where are we found? Are we still in the same place that we were taken to from our homeland? Are we still in the possession being found in the hands of the so-called white man that beat our ancestors and hung them? Are we still acting like we don't know who we are because you running around holding hands, loving on them, eating dinner with them, acting internally, acting like you are one of them because you can look and say, I got possessions that they have. But don't think 1 second. Look at the dollar bill that you got. Let me ask you, front of a dollar bill. Let's look at something real quick. Does this look like you or your people? Does it? Does this look like any of your people? The one that everybody want to get, right? Does this look like any of your people? But you want to feel like you so high and mighty that you are the same as this, because you hate what you look like. You hate what your brother look like. You hate what your Hawashai, who you call Jesus Christ, look like, because he looked just like me. So if you walk around and you hate what I look like, you hate me and despise me, I'm a good for nothing nigga. I'm the dispensable. You know, I don't matter. Then you looking at your Lord and Savior. I'm not saying I'm Yahweh, but we are made in the image of God, right? So you hating the Most High, because he came looking just like his father, which was a so-called black man like me. We were allowed to have prayer meeting in our homes, and we also went to the white folks' church. So where did you learn to love white folks? When you went and learned with the white folks. But they would not teach any of us to read and write. And to this day, let me repeat, and to this day, most of us Israelites, most of y'all Israelites, don't like to read. And if you read something and you don't agree with it, then you stop reading. You don't care about it no more because you're prideful. And it says right here, literally it says it. Let's see where it says. 10. Let's go right here. 10. What does the Lord say? For pride is the beginning. This is Sirach, Ecclesiasticus 10 and 13. For pride is the beginning of sin, and he that hath it shall pour out abominations. And there's nothing more than Eve or so-called black woman or so-called black man, Hispanic man, that they so prideful. They acting they up here and don't know, they can't answer who they really are. But they got Jordans, they got a house. I live near the white folks. I dress like the white folks. I got money with these people's face on it. I'm killed my brother because I want white people's faces. And this isn't even backed up by anything but a hope and a dream. It's not backed by gold. It has no true value. But you value it because you value your oppressor. Because you hate yourself and you hate your people, and you love everything that hates you. And it shows because of what you believe in and what you want and you seek. And you strive for. And it says, and therefore the Lord brought upon them strange calamities and overthrew them utterly. And you wonder why, no matter what you do, you struggling. You always got sayings like, the Lord willing, another day, I'm gonna make it. I'm going through it, but I'll be all right. You always got this struggle, this spiritual spirit. Because it's true, because you prideful. The Lord is dealing with you and bringing you the worst and worst because you full of sin. You the beginning of pride is when one departed from Yahweh and his heart is turned away from his maker. So you far from the Most High if you proud. You proud, and you a so-called proud black man or Hispanic, and you still seeing your people dying. You saying you good? I'm proud. And that you're abominable. You're not keeping the basic understanding, the simple commandment. You don't keep none of the commandments. If you proud and you say you happy, you good, and you look at this and say, thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart, thou shalt not in any wise rebuke the neighbor, and not suffer sin upon them, thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord. So if you got a baby daddy and you hate him, you got kids and you don't tell they dad, you don't tell your kids who their actual father is, or because it didn't work out between you and the baby daddy, now your children don't have an understanding of where they come from or who their parents are. That's hate. That's the utmost hate. You are so full of hate that it's disgusting. You should repent and keep these laws and start doing these simple commandments. No matter what. Oh, my sister, this sister did me wrong. If you my people, I'm not gonna avenge you, man, because the Lord, all vengeance is for the Lord. Romans 12, right? Let's get that. What did he say? The difference is, let's see. You not conform into this world. The mind. So I can. Is it 12? I think it's 12. Be kindly affectionate one to another with brotherly love, and honor, preferring one another. You see what I'm saying? Be one of the same one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men at low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. So you should be trusting. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. And ultimately it says, dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, meaning in the Old Testament, vengeance is mine, which is Yahweh. I will repay, saith the Lord. So when you over here hating your brother, hating the man that you was once married to, hating the woman that of your people, and it says your people. What does it say right here? You should not, your neighbor, it says, thou shalt not bear any grudge against the children of thy people. It didn't say every nation. It didn't say, oh, you can't hate the white man because he put your family in slavery because y'all live next door to neighbor. The Bible says thy neighbor is the children of thy people. Because just because you move next to somebody don't mean you the same people. But Negroes, and y'all so simple that you gotta, I love them. I love them. Captain save an enemy. But I digress. Let's continue. So it says, we are allowed to have prayer meetings in our homes, and we also went to the white folks church, but they would not teach any of us to read and write. Books and papers were forbidden. So these holy scriptures, you weren't getting your hands on. You couldn't, the Lord wasn't near to you. He turned he walked contrary to you. And you were being bound in slavery and tasting the full wrath and the anger and the fire of the Lord. Master's children and the slave children played together. I went around with the baby girl carried to other plantations visiting. She taught me how to talk low and how to act in company. Again, another way that you've been taught that you as savages, y'all are beneath. You need us to teach you how to be great. So that's why to this day you look to them as your saviors, because they changed the picture of our Messiah, Jesus, just the so-called black man, to a white man. Iconoclasm, the Renaissance period, whitewashing them. So now they whitewashed history. You look to them like they taught you how to be civilized, and now you believe that they're your savior. So you don't ever ask about why the Chinese man can't get saved, or why doesn't God love, the Arab man, but you always worry about the white man, because that's who was whipping your back in your family, who taught you that no matter what we do to you, you better love us. You hate your brother forever. You can hate me for probably just looking at you wrong, but you can make an excuse for why the white man's okay in your book to this day. I don't know how you can, with all the stuff that you just see in 2022, let alone 1800, 1600. You got manifestos of them hunting us down, overkill, knees on the neck, shooting us down left and right. It's so normal that you expect to see one of us dead next week, tomorrow. She taught me how to talk lay low and how to act in company, my association with white folks, and my training like an animal while I was a slave is why I talk like white folks. So you didn't. Let's just read that again. My association with white folks and my training, conditioning, repetitively taught to do while I was a slave in subjection, being beaten, oppressed against your will, is why I talk like white folks. What's y'all niggas' excuses? You want the money they got. You want to act like they. You think you act like them, then you gonna be them. You gonna live like them. But our people will learn that because of beating and subjection. The war was begun, and there were stories of fights and freedoms. The news went from plantation to plantation, and while the slaves acted natural, and some even more polite than usual, they prayed for freedom. You know what I'm saying? So we know when to play and keep our mouths closed. You know? Hebrews 14 and let's go Hebrews 13 and 17. This is probably gonna hit the point before, but let's just see. Obey them that have the rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls, as they must give an account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you. So that seems a lot like why you acting white and you talking right white, because you still to this day have been taught to obey your master, which you believe inside of yourself, these so-called white people. Just, you know, it's disturbing if you look at it on a contextual level. Like, wow, the only reason I act right, shit, police can come around and I act different. White people can come around, my tone and my language and my speech changes because I don't want to offend them. I don't want to startle them. That's literally the behavior of the so-called black man or Hispanic, the Israelites. They conform to when they get around the pressure or the presence of the so-called white man. But when they leave, that's when they start acting. They be like, oh, we acting real niggerish now, right? Ain't no white folks here. But when you white folks come around, you got to act like white folks is around, because you still a slave mentally. You still acting like you got to obey them who rule over you, because you think that they watching after your souls. You think that they looking out for you. It's just maddening, man. It's just maddening. Shit, this makes me mad. Like I'm gonna be hot every time I do one of these shows, and this is gonna be. And we're gonna go through each one of these accounts too, these interviews, just so we can see the significance of each individual experience. And in this series, it's gonna be a 34-part series, but we'll try to, if we can, group them. But as you see, an interview can go for an hour or two. So it's gonna be a great experience, and we're gonna learn quite a bit about the history. But it's nothing more important than to be able to see how you are the people of the past, the ancient Israelites, how you are the people that was brought over here in slavery, how you still are here and found in their hands, and you still descend from these people, regardless of how you prefer to call yourself. You are still an Israelite by blood, by birth. We're going to go Matthew 24 and 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Let's look what he said. The war began, and there were stories of fights and freedoms. So it's saying you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. So, right? The news went from plantation to plantation, and while the slaves acted natural, and some even more polite than usual, they prayed for freedom. And literally the Lord said, see that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So they were still hoping and waiting on it. Then one day I heard something that sounded like thunder, and Master and Mrs. began to walk around and act queer. See, don't get disturbed, because the English, this word used to be happy. Nah, you know what? I'm not gonna Google that. I don't want to see what's gonna return. Not with Esau's internet and no, the spirit throw this whole thing. No, thank you. Well, we're just gonna take it that the definition is happy. That's what that's what they used to mean. The grown slaves were whispering to each other. Sometimes they gathered in little gangs and groves. So isn't that what we still like to do? Is click up, get in the little gangs, they say. Next day I heard again, boom, boom, boom. And I went and asked Mrs., is it gonna rain? She said, Mary, go to the ice house and bring me some pickles and preserves. So when it's starting to hit the fan, she's still telling her slave to go run and do orders for her. Go fetch me this. Go give me some food so I can feed my fat face. I went and got them. She ate a little and gave me some. Then she said, you run along and play. She a grown woman and she telling her to go run along and play. The audacity, the caucasity of these people, man. Ezekiel 39 and 21. This is disgusting. So if anybody's like, oh yeah, they love us, we're friends. No, man. You just wait. This is just the first story, the first interview. Neither. This is just the first story. 21. And I will set my glory among the heathen, and all the heathen shall see my judgment that I have executed, and my hand that I have laid upon them. So now you're starting to see where she's getting scared. She's about to see the glory of the Most High, right? And in a day or two, everybody on the plantation seemed to be disturbed, and Master and Mrs. were crying. Masters ordered all the slaves to come to the great house at 9 o'clock. Nobody was working, and slaves were walking over the grove in every direction. At 9 o'clock, all the slaves gathered to the great house, and Master and Mrs. came out on the porch and stood side by side. You can hear a pin drop. Everything was so quiet. The master said, good morning. And Mrs. said, good morning, children. They were both crying. They were crying because they lost y'all black asses. The war came to free you guys from their bondage and captivity. They were so upset that they could not have you as slaves no more, that they are crying. Because if it was left to them to this day, there's MAGA, right? That's how they would want to make it great again. By putting your family and you personally back into slavery to serve them in the most atrocious and harsh conditions and bondage. So they're so mad and upset that they are at tears that they can no longer oppress your people by choice and by freedom and benefit. They were both crying. The master said, men, women, and children, you are free. And I had a thought to believe he had his head down. He was kicking the dirt, pouting and snot hanging out of his nose and looking at his wife like, what we gonna do? We can't keep these niggers no more. Our whole life is over. I wish, hopefully he went in the back and blew his brains out. That's what I hope. Hope he hung himself. Because that's what they like to do when they lose their job. They jump off buildings. They running. They shooting up shit. They kill themselves. They fly a plane into the IRS building. They can't cope. So there's no way in hell these are the ancient Israelites. We're the ancient Israelites. You are no longer my slaves. The Yankees will soon be here. Master and Mrs. then went into the house, got 2 large armchairs and put them on the porch facing the avenue and sat down side by side, remained there watching. So they just stuck like the Lord literally just said. Ezekiel 39 and 21, he literally said, and I will set my glory among the heathen, and all the heathen shall see my judgment that I have executed, and my hand that I have laid upon them. So the house of Israel shall know that I am the Lord their God from that day forward. And the heathen shall know that the house of Israel went into captivity for their iniquity, because they trespassed against me. Therefore hid I my face from them, and gave them into the hand of their enemies. So they all fell by the sword. And that's literally what happened to them. You know what I'm saying? And when I have brought them again from the people and gathered them out of their enemies' lands and sanctified them in the sight of my nations, then shall they know that I am the Lord their God, which caused them to be led into captivity among the heathen. So when you talking about these other nations, the so-called white man, he's a heathen. He cannot be saved. He is not your brother. He is a heathen that took your ancestors, and you are currently still in captivity. And let's if you don't believe that you in 2022 in captivity, let's see what the Bible, Holy Scriptures say. Let's go to the book of Baruch 4. It says, Baruch 4. No, Salaki, Baruch. Is that? No, Salaki, Baruch 3. 3 and 8. There we go. Behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us. So are we still in the United States of America, that we were brought over here in slave ships? Absolutely. For a reproach and a curse. Are these things that we talk about in Deuteronomy 28, Leviticus 26 happening? We don't know who we are. We were sold on slave ships. We have to go to them and want all things: clothes, food, water, drink, cursed in the field. And to be subject to payments. Do you have to pay taxes? Are you subject to them making, your wages? Do you have to? Are you subject to payment? Because whose face is this? Is this my face, or is it this the enemy's face? So are you subject to payment using their currency? Absolutely. Do they apply usury and loan you money and you don't loan them money? So you're in captivity. According to all the iniquities of our fathers. So it ain't what you did, it's literally what our forefathers did that got us sent over here in the first place. That sin before thee. So that's letting you know that you being subject to payments, we're still in the land that they brought us here. We don't know, we don't collectively, if you see a brother that look like you see a so-called Hispanic, you see a so-called Native American, you don't call them your nation of people. You don't even know that you are one and the same people. So you are still destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Hosea 4 and 6. We don't have to get that, but you understand. Actually, let's get that because everybody may not know that. Hosea 4 and 6. These verses. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge, which is the commandments. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no more priest to me. So we don't practice and follow the customs. We don't keep the high holy days. We don't honor the commandments. We don't truly love our brothers and hate our enemies and protect our nation and exalt the name of the Lord our God, Yahweh, Bahashem, Mashiach, Yahweh Shai. We don't know Hebrew. We don't know these things. We think we're English, Spanish, and French. I also will reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. I will also forget thy children. So now you see that the children of the so-called the slaves have become so watered down that they don't know who they are no more. So the Lord literally kept his word. In about an hour, there was one of the blackest clouds coming up in the avenue from the main road. It was the Yankee soldiers. They finally filled the mile-long avenue reaching from Master's house to the main Lewisburg Road and spread out over the mile-square grove. The mounted men dismounted. The footmen stacked their shining guns and began to build fires and cook. They called the slaves, saying, "You are free." But the Lord said, "Can't no man redeem you." And if you don't realize that we still ain't been redeemed, because we're still in these conditions and we still getting shot. You still living in 2-bedroom slave houses while you look across town and the so-called white man got a mansion and Ferraris. You still living in Project Section 8 houses. So the conditions is the exact same. You just don't be fooled. Do not be fooled. Isaiah 42 and 22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hidden prison houses. So look at us. We don't know who we are. They took everything away. They took our heritage. They took our language. They took our land. They took our pride. They took our spirit, and they perverted it with their ideals and their beliefs and their doctrines. All of our people, how many of so-called, look, Hispanics, so-called blacks, all of these people are Israelites, so-called natives. We make the majority of the population in the prison systems, and America has the largest prison system populace in the entire world. The prisons here in America add up to more than all the rest of the world's prison systems together. They are for a prey, and none delivereth. So when they said right here, this white man so-called said, you are free, the Lord said, no, you're not. No man's going to deliver you until the Yahweh comes back, which is Jesus the Christ. For a spoil, and none saith restore. And like right now, it said none say, they spoil us. They mean they shoot us, they kill us, they hold themselves not guilty. They do whatever they want to us, and nobody says nothing in the world. There is no outcry from China, Russia, Ukraine. Nobody, even think about it. You African, no African nation is in an uproar about to launch nukes and send nobody. No weapons, no nothing. They say nothing, and they give you nothing. They don't even send. They won't even give you a slingshot. Let alone billions of dollars for money to make it, to fight against the so-called white man. They're not gonna give you nothing like that. Because they ain't agreeing. They the tumult, the Confederacy, Psalms 83:3. They're a part of the group's agreement globally to oppress you globally, because they all benefit off of us, because we buy all their goods. China, even if we're here, all of our, look at your tags, made in China, made in this, made in that. So we make the money here. We build it up for the so-called white man to live free and get $5 trillion in free labor and textile mills and finances. And we built the Wells Fargos. We built the Bank of America off of slavery, Aetna insurance, all this stuff. And then now they have currency, and now we get our minimum currency and give it to this nation, give it to that nation, give it to this nation. And anything that we have to go to another nation to make a name for ourselves. So you say you got your own fashion company, but where are you buying the fabrics? Did you spend all that stuff from your cotton fields? No, you bought that material cheap from somebody in China, or somebody in Japan, or Indonesia, or India. Your people have nothing, because you don't even know, you are embarrassed and ashamed to call yourself, your God-given nationality, an Israelite. So how are you doing something if you don't even know who you are? What's that old saying? In order to know where you're going, you got to know where you've been. Slaves are whooping and laughing and acting like they are crazy. Yankee soldiers were shaking hands with the Negroes and calling them Sam, Dennis, Sarah, and asking them questions. They busted the door to the smokehouse and got all the hams. Let's just go there. We gotta go there, because Israel they love some swine, man. It's disgusting. And the swine, though he divided the hoof and be cloven-footed, yet he cheweth not the cud, he is unclean to you. Of their flesh shall ye not eat, and the carcasses shall ye not touch. They are unclean to you. So we're not supposed to be eating that. So let the white man eat all the ham. But I bet you we were eating that because, captivity. Because you got pork chop past them now. Shoot, tell the so-called Negro, Hispanic, no more chicharrones, no more, no more baby back ribs, no more pulled pork sandwiches. No more of that stuff. Carnitas, no more. Oh, they look at you, no more camarón, no more pig, no more bacon, no more chorizo, no more of that stuff. Oh man. Oh, you talking about that's the biggest fight. They don't like giving up the dirty, the swine. They garbage cans. They eat anything. They eat themselves. They will eat a human being, digest it. They'll cut it. How do you think that they were keeping these slave ships clean with all the feces and the dead bodies of the slaves that were on there? They'll send the pigs down there. The pigs would eat up all the crap that y'all are dropping, all the menstrual, all of the dead babies, all that stuff that were hitting the ground. The pigs would go on the board, and they would let the pigs live along under there, and then and eat up all and clean up down there. And then after they'll get big and nice, the so-called white man would slaughter the pig and cook it and eat it himself upstairs on the top of the boat. It's nasty. And you wonder why they're ridden full of disease, why they were able to come onto the land with the so-called Gadites, the so-called Native Americans, and so-called Ishkarites, and the Aztecs, and touch them and give them a blanket full of smallpox, or just shake their hand and kill everybody out there? Because that's why. Because they lay and eat filthy animals. The Yankees told the Negroes and Yankees were cooking and eating together. But let's go up one. They busted the door to the smokehouse and got all the hams. They went to the ice house and got several barrels of brandy. Such a time. The Negroes and Yankees were cooking and eating together. The Yankees told them to come on and join them. They were free. Master and Mrs. sat on the porch, and they were so humble no Yankee bothered anything in the great house. And so they was, oh, we're going to take your slaves, we're going to take your stuff, but if y'all act up, we can put you down. But they let them keep their house. That's what you call nation, looking out for your nation. We going to do this to you, but we're not going to take everything from you. What did they do to us? They took everything and some from us. But they left it to their own after being wicked. The slaves were awfully excited. The Yankees stayed there, cooked, ate, drank, played music until about night. Then a bugle began to blow, and you never saw such getting on the horses and lining up in your life. In a few minutes they began to march, leaving the grove, which was soon silent as a graveyard. They took master's horses and cattle with them and joined the main army and camped just across the Cypress Creek. Ain't that funny? Across the Cypress Creek, the Lord is speaking to somebody tonight. 1.5 miles from Master's place on the Lewisburg Road. Ezra 3:11. And they sang together by course, and praising and giving thanks unto the Lord, because he is good, for his mercy endureth forever toward Israel. Not for everybody. Again, listen to this word in the Bible. Israel, Israel, Israel. The Lord is good to Israel. The Lord loves Israel. Israel is getting saved by the Lord from this and that. Where's the heathen? Where is the Edomite that the Lord loves and he's saving? And they over here laughing and having a good old time, just like the Lord said they would. His mercy endureth forever towards Israel. And all the people shouted with a great shout when they praised the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. And so because they were able to, celebrate the acts of the Lord, something powerful happened. When they left, the country, lots of the slaves went with them, and soon there were none of master's slaves yet left. They wandered around for a year from place to place, fed and working most of the time at some other slave owner's plantation, and getting more homesick every day. Deuteronomy 28:65. Let's see what that says. And among these nations thou shalt find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart and failing eyes and sorrow of mind. So when you looking, you walking wandering from place to place, you walking by foot. You ain't got no rest by the sole of your feet. And you got a trembling of heart. You got homesick every day. So this is literally what's happening in time As I'm reading this, this is exactly what's happening to the Israelites in captivity right now. The second year after the surrender, our master and missus got on their carriage and went and looked up all the Negroes they heard of who ever belonged to them. Some who went off with the Yankees were never heard from again. When master and missus found any of theirs, they would say, any of theirs. You see how they still felt like in their head that after they were free, they still belonged to them. So right now you are free walking around here, and they still in their head think you belong to them. And sorry to say, if you don't think that, then you sadly mistaken. That's not going to change for them, because they know how this place is founded. History doesn't change the future. History is a foundational principle of the beginning of a course of action and event, meaning it will forever be, and it's only going to develop and lead to what comes next from that point forward. It doesn't go in a place where it disappears and no longer is null. No longer matters, and it's null and void. It literally just exponentially grows, but it comes from the same point. Some who went off with the Yankees were never heard from again. When master and missus found any of theirs, they would say, well, come on back home. My father and mother, 2 uncles and their families moved back. That's how broken we are. They got free from slavery and went back to the damn plantation. Went back, and they called it home. Destroyed it. Till they got a yoke on your neck, until they just look at that. Just look at that. Deuteronomy 45:6. No, is that it? Right here, 48. Therefore, y'all shall serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And they called it home. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. And if you don't say you're destroyed after being freed from slavery, and go back and call your slave plantation your home, because that's where you got everything that you ever got, that's comes to life in itself right there. It's playing upon tables. My father and 2 uncles and their families moved back. Also, Lorenz, Brody, and John Brody and their families moved back. Several of the young men and women who once belonged to him came back. Saying some were so glad to get back they cried, cause fare had been mighty bad part of the time that they were rambling around, and they were hungry. Like, what can you say to that? The Lord said it all in himself. When they got back, master would say, well, you have come back, have you? And the Negroes would say, yes, master. Most all spoke of them as missus and master, and they did before they surrendered, and getting back home was the greatest pleasure of all. We stayed with master and missus and went to their church, the Maple Springs Baptist Church, until they died. Since they surrendered, I married James Anderson and had 4 children, 1 boy and 3 girls. And we're going to go to Leviticus 26 and 39 real quick. They were happy to be slaves. And you happy to look at these people that did this and destroyed your people so drastically. And you wonder why you still so far gone, thinking that twerking on the top of a car is where it's at as a woman. And they that are left of you shall pine away in their iniquity in your enemy's land. And also in the iniquities of their fathers shall they pine away with them. So when they left and had the chance to go, the kids went back to the same land. The Lord said, you're going to go back to that land. You're going to pine away because you still in sin. You eating pork. You still ain't served out your sentence. And the Lord brought you right back and gave you Deuteronomy 28 and 28. This is why they went back. This is why they went back. The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart. And thou shalt grope at noonday as thy blind gropeth in the darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. And that's literally why they went back, because they couldn't it was too hungry, they couldn't make it. And they only wanted to, and they left oppression, and they only went back to oppression. But that is the interview of Mary Anderson, for the first interview. Please like, subscribe, add any comments to the chat. Until next time, we're going to go into the next interview. It's just sad to see that this is the state of Israel, but this is the evidence to show you that throughout history, this is a first-hand account that Israel experienced, and this is through the lens of the actual slaves. So I hope this was edifying for everyone, and everybody was able to gain a better insight into our ancestral history of Israelites. Kwam Yasharallah, Shalom.